Welcome to the Knowledge Gumbo podcast, where we mix together timeless wisdom and thought provoking stories using quotes, sayings, proverbs, and book passages primarily by Black women. I am your curious minded host, Alicia Thomas. The roux is ready. Let's get cooking. As a Black woman, the decision to love yourself just as you are is a radical act. And I'm as radical as they come. Bethany Epiphany J. Bryant. She is a motivational speaker, author, spoken word artist, and passionate advocate for mental health awareness, particularly in marginalized communities. When we think about radically loving ourselves, it sounds selfish, but it really isn't. The key to loving everything about yourself, even the stuff that you kind of sort of don't like, doesn't mean you don't love yourself. There's always room for growth, for change, but we have to love ourselves before we can truly love anyone else. We have to look at it from the standpoint that loving ourselves gives us the capacity and the mindset to truly love other people. And we have to learn to accept everything about ourselves, from our size, from our skin color, our complexion, the way we look, how we wear our hair, the type of education that we get into, the occupations that we have. We have to learn to love ourselves first and foremost. As Black women, we tend to sacrifice ourselves on the altar for other people. But I think that does them a greater disservice, because then they don't truly always see the value in your sacrifice, because they don't see you value you. So they say, well, why should I? You owe it to me. When you don't owe anyone anything except to love them. But that love has to come from a place of inside you, because you love yourself. And there's an overflowing well of love that covers both you and the people in your life. And I think a lot of our self-sacrifice, all of our, what's the word, when we give ourselves totally away and leave nothing from ourselves, comes from a historical standpoint, when we have to look at how Black women have been viewed, not only within their own community, but from outside our community. If we look at the depictions of, say, like a mammy, where the Black woman is overweight, has oversized lips, or in that same instance, on the other side of that coin, Black women were viewed as very promiscuous. Can't say that word, can I? They were looked upon as being overtly sexual. And how do you look at a woman as being sexual when she had no control over her body during slavery? You could not tell the master, no, I don't want to sleep with you. I have no affection or anything for you. If anything, I hate the ground you walk on. But if I say no, I'm going to be killed. If I say no, my husband is going to be killed. If I say no, my husband or my children will be sold off from me. Even if that child is a product of that rape. So we have to look at our history and reclaim our power and our authority and our ability to love ourselves, because a lot of that abuse caused us to despise ourselves, to despise our circumstances. And we have to get back, reclaim that power that was taken from us. And we were giving all these negative connotations when we look at Black women, especially some of the depictions about, the bigger breast, the sagging breast in some of these cartoon depictions, and they don't look at the historical context of a lot of these Black women not only had to breastfeed their own children, but they had to breastfeed the master's children. Because if you look at it from that standpoint, you have a lot of white women now advocating for the ability to breastfeed and especially to breastfeed in public. But back in those times, they didn't believe in breastfeeding. They thought it was disgusting, and that's what slave women were for. So sometimes when I hear a lot of these, especially Southern politicians, talk against Black people in general and Black women specifically, I put a little smirk on my face because they don't realize that through their family line, there's a whole lot of Black women's milk flowing through their veins that help them grow and get to the next generation because their moms didn't believe in breastfeeding. So they talk a good game, but even they don't know the fullness of their own history. As we look to love ourselves and understand where we come from, we have to redefine what Black beauty is. We have to define what Black woman's intelligence is. Because even in the midst, you can't put it all on white folks because the brothers sold us out on several occasions from the standpoint of the ability to vote. They left us hanging. They were more misogynistic even as recently as the civil rights movement, whereas the majority of the people that got the work done were Black women. But you don't hear that when we talk about the civil rights movement. So we have to go back and learn and value ourselves and not be quiet and not be silent for the sake of others. There were times when we didn't have a choice. There were times when we did have to be mean to our children because it was better for us to beat our children than to have them go out with the possibility of being lynched and killed. But now, since we don't face those issues or to the depth that were faced previously, there's new ways to love our children. There's better ways to do that, and that has to start with loving ourselves and understanding ourselves and seeing where we come from and how we can make it better. Because it wasn't bad. We did what we had to survive. We, we, we garnered our strength together to do what was necessary. But now that we are in control, we have an obligation to ourselves to do better, to be better, to radically love ourselves, to not continuously be the sacrificial lamb, to stand up and take our power back. And in doing so, we give permission to every little Black girl to do the same thing because, as it is known, more is caught than taught. So if a little girl sees you being fabulous at whatever level of fabulous you want to be, that gives them the permission to do the same. We look at it from a standpoint, too, of how radical was it for Cicely Tyson to chop off her hair and wear afro and be the first Black woman to wear an afro on screen. That sent shockwaves through the Black community. But she was taking control of her narrative of how she wanted to be viewed and how she wanted Black women to be portrayed on screen. And it's a similar twist when you look at Diane Carroll having the first Black woman to star on her own series on television. It showed a class, a dignity, and a love of self and a love of her son on the show that she could be strong and other women could be strong. And we can do this life either with a husband or without a husband, but that should not take away from our dignity, our ability to love ourselves, our ability to provide for our families, our ability to have a career that we love. All those portrayals were definitely, definitely radical. And if you want to come on down to, my generation, as far as when we look at rap music, big, big, big Queen Latifah fan when she came out. The whole compilation of women that came out with the song Ladies First, big fan of MC Light. They spoke with power and authority, and they didn't have to show their bodies to do it. It never crossed their mind to do it. I mean, the fact that you have Queen Latifah, I believe she won a Grammy for it, not 100% sure. Her song UNITY, in the verse it talks about not calling her a B or an H. So I have a little bit of trouble with some of the female rappers today, even when they have the skill, the fact that they believe that they have to lead with their bodies, and even some of the names they give themselves, they objectify themselves. They call that power. They'd rather objectify themselves than quote unquote have a man objectify them, but it's still negative. It's not self-love. It's not a radical act of power. It's like making a joke about yourself before someone else can when you're a kid and you get teased and say you're overweight. So you'll make jokes about yourself to compensate so no one else will attack you first. It still does the same amount of damage. And long before R. Kelly was sent to jail for his crimes, I was not a fan. One, because I'm from Detroit. We knew about Aaliyah and her family, and that turned me off. But if you listen to his music, most of his songs objectify women and compare them to inanimate objects that he can do with whatever he wants. We have to take control of our own narratives. We have to push back when people come at us disrespectfully. We don't have to be violent, but we have to say, even if it means speaking, for me, it means speaking with my money. I don't necessarily have to come for somebody and be aggressive and all that. It's just that you don't respect me. I'm not going to spend my money with you or on anything that you produce, because if nothing else, money does talk. And we have to look at it from that standpoint. There is a Christian rapper called D1, and he has a lyric that I really, really enjoy from a song he did called Story is Your Glory. Let me share these lyrics with you. When I do me to the fullest, they can't ignore me. I soak up game from the real ones who came before me. I'm not for everybody, and everybody ain't for me. But those who really get to see my heart, they adore me. That is a powerful, powerful verse. And I think we need to take it to heart, especially as Black women. We got to stop trampling over each other, especially when it comes to relationships, whether it's friendships. We got to stop talking about each other and bringing each other down. Got to lift one another up. But none of that happens if you don't love yourself first. Because without self-love, you feel the need to bring people back down to what you think is quote unquote your level. And that is so terribly wrong. But we have to operate in spaces that show us love. Because if we operate in areas and places with people that show us love, our fountain of love for ourselves and to share with others never runs out. It is very, very important that we radically, radically love ourselves first. We have to stop giving from an empty cup, because it forces us to act like crabs in a barrel where we're bringing other people down instead of lifting other people up. Let's look at that quote one more time. As a Black woman, the decision to love yourself just as you are is a radical act, and I'm as radical as they come. Look at the challenge. Comment below. Share one thing you appreciate about yourself today. Just one thing. It should not be hard to find something that you love and you value about yourself and share it. Let that be the foundation to start the growth of your radical love of self. Because we're not talking about being selfish to the extent of anyone else. We're talking about loving ourselves to give us the capacity to love other people. It is a love that's fulfilling internally so that we can give out to other people. Because radical self-love is a form of activism. And it grows our community, it grows our families, it grows our institutions, because everyone is getting more. No one is taking away from someone else. Thank you for listening and/or watching. In exchange for the value you've received from this episode, please share it with 5 people. Help us to get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers by June 1st. Remember, you are always welcome to pull up a chair. There's always room for one more at the table. The gumbo is spicy, hot, and made with love. See you next week.